Hi, this could be considered an introduction to a class that's working through Bede's ecclesiastical history of the English people. Good morning. I'd like us to continue our discussion of Bede's book that we've been reading through, focusing on one section in particular. In Book 3, chapters 25 and 26, Bede gives us the account of the Synod of Whitby, which takes place in 664. The question I want us to work with today is, what is colliding at the Synod of Whitby? Before we try to answer that question, I want to give us a little bit of background to make sure that we have the information we need to have a meaningful conversation here. First things first, who is at the Synod of Whitby? We basically have two monastic tracts that are present here. The Celtic monastic expression, probably begun, if you will, under the leadership of Columba at Iona. And then we've got the Latin-speaking Western European monastic expression, which is by this time basically going to be Benedictine, heavily influenced by the handbook of Saint Benedict. These two different monastic communities that meet at Whitby actually probably have a shared language from many, many centuries before. I want to highlight three of those and then help us come back to the Synod. The first would be the life of Antony, which is written by Athanasius, which is hopefully a name we recognize from his work on the Incarnation. Antony is recognized as the father of Christian monasticism. His biography shapes and influences the early movement there in the Egyptian desert in particular. The second I want to mention is John Cassian. Cassian has two main books, and you could think of these works as a bunch of interviews that he has with various monks in the deserts. He goes about wanting to ask them, why are you a monk? What is the objective of the monk? What's the heart behind becoming a monk? What are the temptations that you might face as a monk? And questions of that nature. And again, these works begin to spread throughout the Mediterranean and Western Europe, and they give shape to what type of monasticism will develop. The third one to mention is Patrick. Anytime you think of Christianity in Ireland, you come to think of Patrick. As you may know, Patrick is a Romano-Briton boy. Growing up, he is taken captive by pirates, and he's made a slave in Ireland. Eventually, he escapes. More than likely, he is trained theologically in Northern Europe somewhere. Probably this influence of Antony via Athanasius and Cassian are shaping his theology. And eventually, he feels led to go back to Ireland to be a missionary there. All of that is happening in the 300s and 400s. Benedict comes on the scene, he provides his handbook, that spreads throughout Western Europe, and by the time we get into the later 500s, we begin to see these two communities actually taking shape. So back up north in Ireland, we have a fellow named Columba. He eventually starts a community on the island of Iona, and that becomes kind of the hub for Celtic monastic missionary work and their own kind of brand of theology. Back on the continent, of course, all roads lead to Rome, and we see the first monk to become Pope, Gregory the Great, sending a missionary group to England with the goal of kind of re-evangelizing the people there. Over time, these two communities, which are both trying to be missionaries on this small little island, will come together. They will meet. And we see this ultimately at the Synod of Whitby, which is what Bede introduces to us. We need to know what is colliding there. Is it traditions? For example, what date should Easter be? Is it practices? How should the monk's haircut be done? Is it culture? Is the continent different from Ireland? And then, what's Bede's perspective? Who is he writing from? What's colliding at the Synod of Whitby? Let's talk.